GMIST your host for the afternoon, I should say morning. The Sandbox session are designed to bring together small groups of tourism colleagues throughout the region to discuss various topics in an informal and interactive session. So we encourage you to ask questions and share your thoughts on the topic today. Before we begin, it would be great if you could make sure that your name and business and organization is shown at the bottom of your screen. We have time for questions and discussion at the end, but if you think of any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to put them into the chat box, and we will make sure that they are covered in the discussion. Today's session will be recorded, so if you have a colleague who are interested in today's topic, they'll be able to access the recording online through our GMIST website. We know that everyone has busy schedules, so we do our best to keep the session as close to 60 minutes as we can. When we close out the session, a brief survey will pop up, and we would really appreciate it if you could take your time to fill it out. Your feedback is very important to us and helps us continue improving our future GMIST learning opportunities. Before I turn it over to our guest speaker, I would like to give everyone a chance to briefly introduce themselves. I will go around the room on my screen and ask each of you to unmute and share your name and company for a brief organization. Let me see now. We'll get started here. And Brandon.
Hey, I'm Brandon Cooney. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator with the town of Conception Bay South, and I also sit on the tourism committee here. We have a variety of trails that we look after and promote, so I'm excited to hear more about trail carrying capacity today.
Thank you. Bobby.
Hi everyone, Bobby O'Donnell. I'm from the town of Lawrenceville, Bristol. I am the Tourism and Business Development Manager for the town.
Thank you. Jamie.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jamie Easterbrook. I'm the Product Development Officer for Peterborough McCormick Tourism, the destination marketing organization for the city and county of Peterborough in Ontario.
Thanks. Karina.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I don't have enough internet to have video today, but my name is Karina Mansfield. I'm the owner-operator of Deep Roots Adventure. We operate just at the south gate of Algonquin here in Ontario.
Thank you. Samantha.
Hello, my name is Samantha Young. I'm the Sustainable Development Technician for the City of Corner Brook. So same thing, we cover a lot of different trails. So thanks for having me today.
Thank you. Trent.
I'm Trent Burt from Tourism PEI. I'm the Tourism Development Officer.
Perfect. Well, thanks. We had a great bunch of people here today. Excuse me. Did I miss anybody? Oh, Nancy. Sorry, Nancy.
No, that's no problem. Since I still have a scratchy voice, it would have been okay if you wouldn't have said Nancy. Nancy Belleville-Poitier, I'm the tourism coordinator for the city of Carrollton in northern New Brunswick.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Perfect. Today's topic is trail carrying capacity. And today our presenter today is Dr. Kelsey Johansson, Chair of the Trail Research Hub in Waterloo, Ontario. Kelsey?
Bonjour, bienvenue, and welcome. As mentioned, my name is Dr. Kelsey Johansson. My pronouns are she, hers, and hers. And I'm the chair of the Trail Research Hub, which is a collaborative think tank that brings together dedicated trails researchers and practitioners from academia, industry, and community, each of whom brings their unique experience and expertise to our team. Our mission is to provide a central hub for the Canadian Trails community to share information and resources, foster collaborative research and innovation, and create community through relationship building and collaborative research, education, and outreach initiatives. In addition to my work with the hub, I am an academic, and I've conducted research in Canada, the United States, Micronesia, and New Zealand on topics related to sustainable, nature-based, rural, community-driven, regenerative, and transformative tourism product development. And I've taught courses on things like nature-based tourism product development, agritourism, community-based tourism, rural community tourism and economic development, and Tourism for Sustainable Development at the Universities of Manitoba, Lakehead University, and the University of Waterloo. I'm thrilled to be participating in the Grossmorn Institute for Sustainable Tourism Sandbox series, and I look forward to sharing my perspectives on how many trail users is too many, including ways that you can help to define your trail carrying capacity with the end goal of enhancing trails and trail towns' physical, ecological, social, cultural, and economic carrying capacities, with the end goal of ensuring sustainable trail design, development, and delivery. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Nora Fever for the invitation to be here today, and Darlene Hastings for providing live technical support and facilitation. So I'd like to acknowledge that while we meet today in this virtual setting, we are joining the Sandbox series from numerous locations. Today, I am presenting from the Trail Research Hub's Toronto head office, which is located on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. These lands are also home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people who call the Greater Toronto Area home. The Trail Research Hub and myself as chair also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, which is signed with multiple Mississauga and Chippewa bands. We are all treaty people with rights and obligations laid out in these and other treaties. We are therefore called upon to treat this land, its waterways, plants, animals, stories, and its peoples with honor and respect. As tourism operators, marketers, and promoters, we have an opportunity to educate the people who visit our communities about whose lands they're recreating on and traveling through. And we have an opportunity to work collaboratively, respectfully, and in a good way with local Indigenous communities, organizations, and businesses, and to maximize the benefits of our industry for all members of our community. So, as you may have gathered from the title of my presentation today, we're going to talk a fair bit about this concept of trail carrying capacity. The term carrying capacity, generally speaking, was first coined in the natural sciences, and it was used to calculate and describe things like the total population size of a given species, such as deer, that an ecosystem can support given the extent of things like available resources, food, shelter, water, available mates, etc. However, since the 1980s, the term has been applied to leisure settings to determine how many people is too many people for a particular site or a destination to handle. Broadly speaking, when we apply this concept to trails, which can be both recreation and tourism assets, we're looking at the maximum number of people or trail users that can simultaneously visit a particular site, such as a trail, and the wider community or destination that houses it, in this case, a trail town, without causing destruction to the physical, economic, sociocultural environment, and without causing an unacceptable decrease in the quality of visitor satisfaction and the quality of life for local residents. When approached from a leisure studies perspective, trail carrying capacity has 5 key domains. These are the physical, the ecological, the economic, the social, and the cultural. So when we think about the physical domain, we're referring to the physical space or the built environment. In this case, we're thinking about infrastructure and superstructure that is supporting a site or a destination. When we look at the environmental domain, we're referring to the ecosystem in which the recreation or tourism site operates or where the destination itself resides. The economy refers, not surprisingly, to the economic domain or the local, regional, and national economic context in which a recreation or tourism site operates and where it provides those services. The social and cultural domain are often spoken of interchangeably, but they are different. When we look at the social domain, we're referring to the quality of life of local residents, and we're thinking about the community's receptivity towards recreation and tourism development, and the user's social experience of accessing recreation sites or tourism destination areas. Whereas when we're thinking about that cultural domain, we're referring to the cultural context of the host community, including things like both tangible and intangible cultural heritage. Looked at from the perspective of each domain, domain-based carrying capacities for trails can best be understood as the physical carrying capacity relating to the maximum number of trail users and trail user types that a trail is able to support without degradation to the trail or its associated amenities. If we think, for example, about a trail that's designed for predominantly pedestrian use, its physical carrying capacity will be adversely impacted by things like motorized trail users or mechanized trail users like cyclists using a trail that's not designed for them. The ecological carrying capacity in turn refers to the maximum number of users and user types that a trail is able to support without degradation of the natural environment and without giving rise to adverse ecosystem changes, things like introduction of invasive species, reduction in soil cover, trampling, and habitat fragmentation, while also ensuring that the trail and the associated greenway provides valuable ecosystem services to the wider community. The social carrying capacity in turn talks about the maximum number of users and user types that a trail and its surrounding communities are able to support without an unacceptable decline in the quality of visitor experience, without inter-user conflict, for example, between cyclists and hikers or between cyclists and motorized trail users. And we're also looking at avoiding an unacceptable negative impact on the communities surrounding the trail. So making sure that there's positive relations between trail users, whether they're locals or tourists, and local residents. Cultural carrying capacity, as it relates to trails, refers to the maximum number of users and user types that a trail and its surrounding community are able to support without unacceptable changes in the culture of the host population of the local community. We may think, for example, about all of the news coverage that we've seen recently about being over tourism prior to the pandemic, and how really challenging relationships could build up in certain communities between a tourist population and a local population. That may be conflicts of values, conflicts over use of space, or conflicts associated with there being too many users of a space in what the community thought of as an important place to them. When we're thinking about economic carrying capacity, we're talking about the maximum number of users and trail user types that a trail and its surrounding community are able to support before economic growth associated with the trail begins to interfere with other economic activities, including potentially obstructing other forms of economic development, and also before the community becomes economically dependent on a specific level of tourist expenditures per year, without which the economy at a local level could potentially collapse. I think, for example, about a number of communities throughout the 1990s and early 2000s that were historically resource-dependent communities and who were sold based on the beautiful natural environments in which they occurred on the idea of natural resource-based tourism development, and how the pandemic and associated loss of those tourism expenditures has led to local economic frailty. Put all of these 5 domains together, and we're looking at the overarching trail carrying capacity, which is a function of the intersection of all of these 5 domains: the physical, the ecological, the social, cultural, and the economic carrying capacity of the trail and its surrounding communities. So recently, a number of tools and guidelines have been released that aim to help Canadian trail operators determine whether their trails are recreation and also tourism ready. These trail recreation and tourism readiness guidelines tend to focus on the quality of the visitor experience. So for example, they might focus on whether or not the trail is set in a desirable setting, whether it has scenic beauty or clearly defined difficulty levels, and whether it also talks about acceptable uses along the trail, the availability of trip planning resources, the presence of wayfinding signage and interpretive programs, and the availability of support services and amenities, as well as whether or not there's been the creation of associated tour and experience packages, and whether or not the trail has sufficient marketing, strategy, and promotional plan in place. Additional criteria that may or may not be included in a readiness audit include things like the accessibility of the trail, which typically relates to whether or not the trail meets the needs of visitors with diverse mobility needs, such as wheelchair users, persons who require well-spaced benches or other rest stops, or whether the trail can accommodate families with young children who may use strollers. Well, this approach provides strong criteria for assessing and also determining the support in destination management and marketing elements are in place for a given trail. and it provides insights into the visitor experience, it does fall short in determining the physical, social, cultural, economic, and even ecological carrying capacity of the trail. Other trail development strategies have focused on things like business integration and trail awareness among local business operators and trail-friendly business criteria. My colleagues on the call today from Ontario may be aware of the Ontario by Bike, bike-friendly business program, which is an excellent example of outreach for local businesses. This approach is most closely aligned with the Trail Town model, which first emerged in the United States and has recently begun to gain a lot of traction in areas of Canada. However, one crucial element is missing from most of these toolkits, and it centers around the idea of trail carrying capacity. While these toolkits provide valuable resources that can help to build quality visitor experiences, they're based on the assumption that the trail and the destination community or communities, if a long distance trail, can sustain an increase in visitor numbers. It's therefore important for trail destinations planning to include a few key questions. These may include: what types of experiences do your main visitor segments want? And can you deliver these without negatively impacting your community and the visitor experience? Oftentimes, trails begin their life as a community-based vision for enhanced outdoor recreation opportunities and for access to nature and the outdoors. As such, they're typically designed to accommodate the needs of the current percentage of the community interested in trail-based outdoor recreation pursuits, while actively working to identify and meet projected future needs at a local level. This may look like identification of all trail user segments, community engagement with relevant stakeholders, not just trail users, development and delivery, as well as review of a community trail or trail network master plan, and a vibrant regional trail committee that supports localized trail champions and trail organizations. As such, community-based trails or recreational trails are designed to accommodate the needs of the projected percentage of the community or the local market segment interested in trail-based outdoor recreation. As we saw during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, many trails in Canada and even around the world experienced unprecedented visitation and use. This included many trail users who were trying trail-based activities for the very first time, probably because their preferred recreation activities were unavailable to them, and many of them were unfamiliar with the outdoors. Typical user complaints during the pandemic centered around human and dog waste along the trail, overflowing garbage cans at trailheads, dirty bathrooms, or a lack of bathroom facilities and other amenities, insufficient parking, lack of passing space on the trail, and overcrowding at scenic lookouts and amenities. Other challenges involved experiencing local trail users feeling like they were being crowded out of their favorite trails or sites. And in turn, they went off trail to seek new experiences, asked trail groups to expand existing trail networks to separate them from more novice users. Or in the worst case scenario, many even undertook rogue trail building activities, designing and building their own trails, sometimes in environmentally sensitive areas or places where trail organizations and conservation stewards would prefer that trails weren't. Some trail systems also experienced increases in the number and severity of inter-user conflicts, predominantly between what are typically considered incompatible trail uses, such as cyclists and walkers or hikers, or non-motorized users and motorized users. All of these issues posed numerous challenges for trail organizations, including the need for enhanced wayfinding signage and for trail user education and communication strategies, spanning and surpassing typical social media campaigns, rat cards, and trail signage, which may be already put in place. It also placed a greater burden on volunteer and non-for-profit trail groups, particularly for trail maintenance, grooming, and amenity upkeep, as well as servicing, leading to volunteer burnout and attrition. But the fact of the matter is, these aren't new issues. In fact, they're the very same issues we see when a community or a trail organization begins to promote itself as a trail town or a trail for non-local users, if they haven't engaged in sufficient preparation and planning. So what does it mean to be trail tourism ready? Being truly trail tourism ready means having more than a trail and a great marketing plan. Being trail tourism ready requires an audit of existing trail resources and human resources and financial capital. It requires extensive community outreach and also market research. Ultimately, it should result in a unique community-based approach to creating a trail town program for your specific trail and the community or communities through which it passes. A trail town is typically thought of as a community through which a trail passes that supports trail users with services, promotes the trail, and embraces the trail as a resource to be protected and celebrated, based on an integrated and supportive relationship between a town, the trail, and its volunteers. A Trail Town program is a program facilitated by a trail organization that supports local communities, including business improvement areas, chambers of commerce, and local economic development offices in assessing their willingness and their ability to offer trail-ready services while working with the overarching community, not directly involved in tourism and hospitality, to create a welcoming environment and a reciprocal relationship between locals and non-local trail users. Being trail tourism ready, therefore, means being able to deliver the type of trail tourism experiences your main visitor segments want without negatively impacting your community and the visitor experiences, both now and in the future. As communities look to recover economically in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic, many are seeking ways to expand their tourism offerings, including marketing existing trails to non-locals. The challenge with this is that many of those trails and the trail organizations that steward them are trying to recover from the overuse experienced during the peak of the pandemic, a process that, due to things like lack of funding, forest fires, flooding, severe weather events, limited volunteer labor, etc., is likely to take 2 or more trail seasons to accomplish. In light of this, if a destination employs one of the existing tourism-ready guidelines that do not factor in the 5 domains of trail carrying capacity to evaluate the potential for trail tourism in their region, they're likely to get an unrealistic picture of how ready they are. This can include things like failing to account for the current condition of the trail and its amenities, whether or not the trail organization that stewards the trail or section of the trail has the resources, both financial and human, to get tourism ready, whether or not the trail organization that stewards the trail or section of the trail has sufficient insurance coverage and or private landowner permissions for use by non-members or tourists, as well as other trail uses, whether the ecosystem surrounding the trail has had sufficient time to recover from existing visitor impacts and natural events, like the aforementioned forest fires, severe winter weather events, and spring flooding, whether or not the trail has the physical or environmental support capacity for more users or other user types than it already is bearing the burden of, and whether existing community businesses have the capacity to support and increase tourist demand, for example, providing food and lodging, due to what we're currently experiencing as a labor shortage in the hospitality and tourism sector, both in Canada and around the world. And lastly, whether local communities have the capacity and the desire to absorb, meaning both support and make welcome, trail tourists at this time. Left with a false sense of preparedness for trail tourists, a trail organization and its host community or communities may begin to welcome trail tourists before actually being prepared to do so. Whether it's insufficient resources to support more trail users or insufficient community or business support for trail-based tourism, this can lead to tensions between trail tourists and locals, and also within the local population. Prior to the pandemic, as I mentioned before, many destinations were experiencing over-tourism. The term over-tourism refers to a state where the impacts of tourism on a destination or a part of a destination, including things like overcrowding and congestion, are perceived to negatively impact the quality of life of citizens and or the quality of visitor experience, often leading to conflict between locals and tourists, as well as between groups of locals and or between types of tourists. This would be really easy for a community insufficiently prepared to welcome or welcome back trail tourists to reach a state of over-tourism, to burn out the local volunteers who make trails possible, and to exhaust local goodwill towards non-local trail users. This in turn would have negative implications for the trail and the trail town's reputation, as well as their future viability as tourism destinations. To combat this, trail organizations and potential trail tourism destinations need to work together. Preparing for trail tourism needs to be a multi-stakeholder conversation. It needs to include, among other things, trail organization representatives, destination marketing organizations, business improvement area or chamber of commerce representatives, and also locals. And it needs to center around defining the trail and associated trail towns carrying capacity. This assessment needs to be based on a current status inventory, which includes establishing baseline metrics for measuring all 5 carrying capacity domains, to identify areas for pre-tourism readiness improvements, and to assist in determining whether levels of acceptable change are being surpassed within and across any of the domains in subsequent inventory years. When implementing this approach, it's important to involve all stakeholders in the process: trail organization representatives, destination marketing organizations, business improvement area or chamber of commerce representatives, as well as locals and others interested in the potential development of trail tourism. This means collectively and collaboratively defining the trail and associated trail towns carrying capacities based on the 5 domains. This includes conducting a current status inventory of all trails within your network. Perhaps you need to invest in additional signage, remediate some areas that have experienced damage, or create a trail route around a private landowner's segment of the trail who's unwilling at this time to accommodate an increased trail user load. It also means establishing baseline metrics for all 5 carrying capacity domains to identify areas for pre-tourism readiness improvements and to assist in determining whether levels of acceptable change are being surpassed within and across the domain in subsequent inventory years. Really important to implementing this approach is building carrying capacity within your trail organization and trail town. This can include determining local trail organizations' capacities and seeking support where needed, and also determining local business appetite and readiness. And I'll speak more about this in a moment. It also involves establishing a regional trail tourism strategic plan and connecting it to your regional recreational trails master plan, as well as integrating your key performance indicators, metrics of success, and limits of acceptable change identified through your process of your current inventory of trails and through your identification of baseline metrics for all 5 carrying capacity domains. It means setting up a cyclic review process where you assess these KPIs against your limits of acceptable change in areas like cultural resources, tangible and intangible, ecological impacts, economic impacts, community quality of life, etc., and integrating that feedback into the next regional trail tourism strategic plan. Then and only then is it appropriate to begin to market your trail or trail network and your community or trail town destination or destinations. This can involve seeking support from your local destination marketing organizations, tourism offices, or business improvement area. It's important to start small and build your way towards an upward increase in tourists, starting with local regional tourists, then looking at more domestic or interprovincial or interterritorial tourists, and then looking internationally. This provides meaningful opportunities for you to check in and see what the impact of current visitation numbers is on all of your associated domains of trail-based carrying capacity before increasingly welcoming in more tourists. So community engagement is an essential element of trail development, implementation, and delivery, and it's a key contributor to the viability of trails, whether they're developed for recreational use or as a means of economic development, including but not limited to trails and trail towns as tourism destinations. Regenerative approaches to trails and trail-based tourism involve a commitment to trails and tourism as tools to create thriving destination communities or trail towns, and to regenerate and heal damaged resources through community, local business, and industry engagement in every step of the trails and trail town development process. Central to successfully achieving this goal is enhancing trails and trail town capacities. When we look at trail organizations, this can entail taking a collective impact approach, whereby a single backbone overarching organization is identified in order to have that centralized organization Support smaller trail organizations. Most trail organizations are volunteer-run, nonprofit charitable organizations, and as such, they cannot and should not do everything themselves. A regional trail committee who takes a collective impact approach can help spread the workload, avoid competition for funding, and can act as a central advocate, outreach, and contact point for local tourism and other businesses, as well as local tourists. By looking at ways to spread the workload, to highlight the successes and key capacities of each smaller trail organization within a larger collective impact organization, you can really make sure that you are fostering a community that is built on its abilities and willingness to welcome tourists. From a trail town and local business perspective, it's important to recognize that most businesses more than 5 kilometers from a non-motorized trail will not immediately see ways to benefit from trail tourism. This is because a lot of them have a hard time understanding how a walking tourist, like a hiker or a nature appreciation enthusiast or birder, is going to make it from the trailhead to their amenity or resource. They might be better able to understand how a cyclist could, but they're going to find it very hard to understand how they will connect to the trail. This issue can be combated through a process called community engagement, where you look at ways to build a trail town program that helps communicate benefits and build buy-in and support. Trail town programs are quite popular in the United States, and they're becoming increasingly popular here in Canada. The Group of 7 Lake Superior Trail in Northern Ontario recently embarked on their G7, Group of 7, Trail Town program. This program offers marketing, promotion, and support for businesses. It offers mentorship and support for businesses who are new to catering to trail tourists. And it also provides support for local and regional packaging, as well as cross promotion, in order to ensure that businesses in and around the Group of 7 Lake Superior Trail on the North Shore of Lake Superior can benefit from the presence of tourists in the community. They also do an admirable job celebrating trail-friendly business success stories by highlighting key trail-friendly businesses each month in their newsletter and showcasing them across social media. This helps to make businesses feel connected to the trail, but it also helps for trail users to find those businesses that they know have set up special ways to connect with them as trail users, and that those trail-friendly businesses are welcoming tourists and will provide the amenities and services that they need. So that concludes sort of my portion of the facilitated conversation today. I'd like to thank the Grossmore Institute for Sustainable Tourism and both Nora Fever and Darlene Hastings for the invitation to speak with you all today and for supporting the facilitation of today's presentation. I hope that the Sandbox series presentation has provided a meaningful context to better understand sustainable trail and trail town development, including their relationship with community-based tourism development and governance, and that this will act as a mere jumping off point for our Q&A session, where I hope to address your practical questions about implementing trail carrying capacity and community engagement within your own trail tourism product development approaches. If you would like any additional information on any of these topics, please do get in touch. You can email us at info@trailresearchhub.com, or you can follow us on social media by reaching us at @trailresearchhub on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, or trails_research on Twitter, or you can visit our website where you can subscribe to or read any of our previous blog posts, including blog posts on trail towns, economic development, community governance, collective impact models in trails. Once again, thanks for coming today, and I hope that we will be able to now transition into a Q&A session. I'm just going to minimize my screen so that I can see everyone and see the chat. And then I'm happy to take any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. That was a lot of great information.
I know it may have been a little dense and people might be kind of still processing it. So if people would like to take a minute and digest it a little bit more, I'm happy to give people a minute before they start popping up with questions. Also, if you're having issues with your internet, you're more than welcome to pop them into the chat box as well, because I can see that now.
I don't have a specific question. I think, Darlene, you did mention that this will be available, the PowerPoint will be available after. There was just so much information. I want to be able to take another look.
Absolutely,
Yes.
Jamie. You're more than welcome to email me. I'll also make it available to Darlene. And we've actually got our trail resource library located in the Kawartha Highlands, so right near you. So if you'd ever like to get together and chat a little bit more, I'd be happy to arrange that as well.
That would
Yes.
be wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it was a lot of great information. A lot to take in.
Yes.
Anybody else with any questions? Okay, well, I'd like to thank Kelsey again. It was fantastic, and thank you for taking your time, and thank you everyone for attending. Please don't forget to complete the survey at the end of the session and check out GMIST.ca for our upcoming programs. And thanks again, everybody.
And I've put my email address in the chat box if anybody would like to take that down and send me any more specific questions later once they've had a chance to look over the PowerPoint or re-listen to the recording.
Thanks, Kelsey. That's great.
No problem.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, we'll be seeing you. And thanks for coming.